Either you give your room to my wife, or you get the hell out right now." Andre shouted those words straight across the dinner table. During the dinner, I had cooked with my own hands. Not whispered, not hinted, shouted in front of the whole family, as if he were giving orders to an employee under him, as if my bedroom were something that could be bargained with. As if I had no right to say no inside my own home. Tessa sat close beside him, arms lightly crossed, her lips curved into a small smile, perfectly controlled. The kind of smile she always wore whenever she was certain she was about to get what she wanted. My sister-in-law, Mildred, immediately turned her face away, awkward, avoiding my eyes as if not looking would make it less awful. And my granddaughter, Brianna, pressed her lips tightly together, lowered her head, both hands clenched on her knees. No one defended me. No one said a word. And me, Darlene Knox, 69 years old, a widow, a mother who had devoted her entire life, just sat there feeling as if something inside me cracked, but not in a painful way, not sadness, not anger. It was best clarity. For the first time in a very long time, I looked straight at this situation and saw it exactly as it was. My son was throwing me out of my own bedroom, as if I were nothing but a piece of furniture that needed to be moved to make the house feel tidier. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I took a deep breath, set my fork and knife down gently on the table, and said in a calm voice that even surprised me, "All right, Andre, I'll go pack my bags." The entire table fell into silence. Andre stared at me, stunned, as if he had been waiting for screaming, for tears, for me to plead. Tessa let out a tense little giggle that sounded like a glass about to crack. Mildred cleared her throat softly, trying to create noise to fill the heavy emptiness. Brianna looked up at me, eyes wide, shocked, but I had already stood up, folded my napkin carefully out of habit, then turned and walked toward my room, back straight. That night, they stayed in the dining room. They kept laughing and talking. They kept clinking glasses. They kept pretending it had all been a normal conversation. And me, I sat on the edge of the bed, my phone resting in my palm. I didn't cry. I didn't go numb. I opened listings for houses near Lake Michigan. There was one listing Paula, my best friend, had sent me a few weeks earlier on WhatsApp, a small, lovely house with a wooden deck and a direct view of the lake. Paula had even texted, "Darlene, look at this. One day we'll have a place like this and we'll raise a glass while we watch the sunset." Back then, I had only replied with a laughing emoji, treating it like a far-off dream, the kind of dream you mention just for fun. But that night, while the clinking glasses and fake laughter echoed from the dining room all the way down the hallway, I opened that message again and looked at it with completely different eyes. The house was about an hour's drive from Milwaukee, 2 bedrooms, a spacious kitchen. The price was high, but it fit my savings perfectly. The savings I had built over so many years, years of freelance bookkeeping, years of saving every single dollar after paying the bills for this house. Years of saying no to trips, to indulgences, to things I wanted to buy for myself, because there was always something more urgent. Andre's college tuition, Andre's car, Andre's wedding, rent money for Andre and Tessa whenever they were short. I took a screenshot of the listing. Then I opened my banking app and checked my savings. I had enough. Not just enough, more than enough. And for the first time in decades, a thought surfaced in my mind, one that left me both shaken and strangely weightless. That money is mine. I stared at the number in my account, $210,000, and memories flooded back like water. It wasn't just money. It was each year, each sacrifice, stacked on top of another into a mountain of silent things. I remembered the gold bracelet, the last gift David, my husband, gave me before he died. When Andre was 19, he needed $3,000 to repair the car he had crashed into a utility pole after a night of partying. He didn't have insurance. He cried. He said that without a car, he couldn't work, couldn't go to school, couldn't survive. I took that bracelet to the jewelry shop on North Avenue. The owner held it up, weighed it, then looked at me with pity. "Are you sure?" he asked. "This is 18-karat gold, beautifully hand-engraved." "I'm sure," I said, even though my hand was shaking as I signed the sales slip. Andre said, "Thanks, Mom," quickly, took the cash and left. He didn't ask where I got it. And that night, staring at my empty finger, I told myself, this is what mothers do. We sacrifice. But now, sitting in the house I had paid for over 30 years, while my son had just demanded I hand over my own bedroom to his wife, I realized a truth I should have understood a long time ago. Sacrifice and being used are two completely different things. I also remembered my 67th birthday, 2 years ago. I wasn't hoping for anything grand. I only hoped Andre would stop by, maybe bring a cake, a card, or simply sit and eat with me. I cooked dinner myself, placed a candle on a supermarket cupcake, and waited. At 6 p.m., I texted, "Are you coming home for dinner?" At 9, Andre replied, "Sorry, Mom, forgot, busy with work." Another time. I blew out the candle alone in a dark kitchen. No one called, no one remembered, not even Brianna, my beloved granddaughter, texted a single line. Later, I found out Andre hadn't told the girl it was my birthday. That night I cried, but I cried very quietly, pressing my face into the pillow so no one would hear. Not because I needed a party, because I realized I had become so invisible that my own son didn't even remember the day his mother was born. And then 3 days later, Andre called and asked if he could borrow $1,500 because he and Tessa wanted to take a weekend trip to Door County. I gave it to him. Of course I gave it to him, because that was what I always did. The next morning at exactly 7, I called the real estate agent. A young woman answered in a professional voice. I told her I wanted to see the house that same day. There was a very brief pause on the other end. Then she said, "Wonderful, Mrs. Knox. I'll see you at 11. I confirmed, hung up, and stared at my phone screen as if I had just stepped across an invisible line. At 9, Andre came downstairs, hair messy, yawning as he walked. When he saw me sitting on the living room sofa, he frowned. "Is breakfast ready?" "No," I replied without looking up. "I have to go out." "Where are you going so early?" "I have an appointment." He huffed, opened the refrigerator, rummaging around like this house belonged to him. "Fine. Just don't be gone too long. This afternoon, Tessa wants you to drive her to the mall." "I won't be able to," I said, then stood up before he could argue. Andre looked at me with a strange, unfamiliar expression, but he didn't say anything else. I went upstairs to the guest room that, since last night, by the way they were acting, had become officially Tessa's. Then I took clean clothes from the closet. I put on jeans, the pair Paula had convinced me to buy last month, a simple white button-down shirt, walking shoes. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw a 69-year-old woman with eyes that still held clarity and a jaw tightening with determination. At 10:30, I left the house. Andre was watching TV in the living room. Tessa was still asleep. No one asked where I was going. No one tried to stop me. Driving north on I-43 toward Sheboygan, I suddenly remembered the first time Andre brought Tessa home. 5 years ago. Andre had been so excited that day. He talked about his new girlfriend, smart, beautiful, ambitious. I had hoped for so much. I hoped I would have a real daughter-in-law. A friend. Someone who could fill the space David had left behind. Someone who loved my son and respected me. Tessa walked into the house in a perfect white dress, a perfect smile, too. She carried an expensive bottle of wine and said all the right things, but there was still something cold. The way her eyes swept around the house as if she were estimating property value. The way she touched Andre's hand, not affectionately, but in a way that was possessive. And the way she asked me questions that sounded polite but had sharp tips. How her mother had never had to work because her father earned enough. Then she glanced at my old sofa. Then she asked, "When are you going to retire and enjoy life?" As if my bookkeeping work wasn't real life. As if I were just hanging on. I ignored those signs. I made excuses. She's young, she's nervous, she'll get better. But Tessa didn't get better. She only grew more comfortable treating me like the help and paying me back with 2 words: family love. The wind rushed through the slightly open window. I turned on an old playlist from my younger days, letting the songs pull me away from the tightness in my chest. It had been years since I'd taken a long drive alone like that. Years since I'd done something truly for myself. Because before, someone always needed something. There was always a call. Always a favor. Always an emergency. But that day, on the road to Sheboygan, with the wind hitting my face, I felt lighter. Truly lighter. At 11, I arrived right on time. The agent was already waiting. A woman in her 50s, white blouse, friendly smile. "Mrs. Knox, it's lovely to meet you. Come on in." The house was even more beautiful than in the photos. Small, yes, but filled with light. The windows faced straight out to Lake Michigan. The deck had enough space for a table and a few chairs. I looked out at the water and pictured myself there, drinking coffee in the morning, reading a book, listening to the waves, and no one demanding I do something for them. "What do you think?" the agent asked. "I think it's perfect," I said. She smiled. "Would you like a few days to think about it?" "No," I said. "I want to buy it now." She stared at me, startled, as if she wasn't used to someone deciding that fast. "Are you sure, Mrs. Knox? This is a big decision." I looked her straight in the eyes. "I've been making decisions for 69 years. This is the first decision I'm making, only for myself." She nodded, still surprised, and pulled paperwork from her bag. She explained. The price was $180,000. I could wire the funds within 2 days. The house had no liens. It was ready to close. I listened while calculating in my head. I had $210,000 saved. After buying the house, I would still have $30,000 for the next steps. I signed the first documents right there on the empty kitchen table, the table of a home that was already starting to feel like it belonged to me. The agent handed me her business card, went over the next steps, and told me I could move in within 72 hours if I wanted. "Perfect," I said. "I want to move in within 72 hours. I left the house with a set of temporary keys in my hand. I stood on the deck, staring out at Lake Michigan stretching in front of me. The waves came and went in a steady rhythm, peaceful, as if this world had never known the sound of a scream in the middle of a family dinner. The waves didn't demand I cook breakfast, didn't make me give up my room, didn't force me to apologize for existing. The waves simply were there. And for the first time in a long time, I wanted to simply be there too. The wind tossed my silver strands, hair I had stopped dyeing 2 years earlier, because Andre had said, "Natural suits you better." I looked at those silver strands and thought, this is the hair of a woman who has lived 69 years, who has loved, who has lost, who has sacrificed, and now, finally, is learning how to live for herself. My heart was pounding, not from worry, but from excitement, a feeling I had almost forgotten. I took out my phone, snapped a photo of the horizon, and sent it to Paula on WhatsApp with a short line. "I did it." Paula replied within seconds. "Did what?" "I bought the lake house." There was a long silence on her end, then messages poured in like rain. "You're not serious, Darlene. Answer me. You really bought it? When? How? Does Andre know?" I laughed to myself on the empty deck. I typed back, "Andre doesn't know anything, and I'm not telling him until I'm already here." Paula called immediately. The moment I picked up, she shouted, excited like a child, "Darlene Knox, I can't believe you did it. Tell me everything. What did Andre say when you told him?" "I haven't told him anything yet," I said. "Last night at dinner, he screamed in my face that I either give my room to Tessa or pack my bags. So I'm going to do exactly what he said. I'm going to pack my bags, and I'm leaving." Paula fell silent for a beat, then sighed, her voice suddenly lower. That boy has no idea who he just messed with, does he? I stared out at the lake and said slowly, "No, he has no idea." But I knew one thing clearly. To truly leave, I needed more than a new house. I needed to break my old habit, the habit of fixing everything for them before they ever had to take responsibility. And I also knew that when Andre discovered what I was doing, that dinner would only have been the beginning. In the next part, I'll tell you how I began packing right there in the house they were sure I'd never dare leave, and why this time I decided to do everything in silence until it was too late for them to pull me back. I drove back to Milwaukee that afternoon. This time I drove more slowly, not because I was tired, but because I wasn't in a hurry anymore. I cracked the window a little and let the wind pour in, savoring the feeling of being alone on the road, a feeling I hadn't had in a very long time. By the time I got home, it was nearly 6 p.m. Andre's car was parked right out front. I stood at the door, took a deep breath, as if I were about to step back into an old life I was about to close with my own hands. Andre was sprawled out on the living room sofa, eyes glued to some show on TV. Tessa was in the kitchen, preparing something using my pots, my stove. So comfortable, as if she had owned this place for a long time. "Where did you go?" Andre asked, not even looking up from the screen. "Taking care of work," I replied, then walked straight up to my room. I closed the door, and in that exact moment, I stood still in the middle of the room, looking around as if I were truly seeing everything for the first time. The framed photos of Andre when he was little, the watch David gave me before he died, the blanket I bought on the trip to Waupaca. The books stacked on my nightstand. Everything had a story, a memory, a piece of my life. But the strange thing was, none of it made me feel like this was home anymore. I reached out and picked up the watch. My fingers traced the old glass. David gave it to me on my 40th birthday, 2 years before his first heart attack. "So you'll always remember how precious the time we have together is," he had said, fastening it onto my wrist. His hands were warm, steady, and full of peace. I wore it every day for 12 years, through David's 3 heart attacks, through the final months in the hospital, when he lay there among wires and machines, still trying to smile at me as if to say, "Don't be afraid." Then one evening, his voice so weak it nearly dissolved into the beep of the heart monitor, he whispered, "Promise me." I leaned in close. "Promise me you'll live. Not just exist, but truly live." I forced a thin smile, wiping my tears, pretending I hadn't heard what he was saying. "What are you talking about?" "You'll be fine. We're going to live together." But David shook his head, gently, slowly, like a man who had seen something I refused to see. "If I don't make it, don't spend the rest of your life serving other people. Andre is grown. Live for you, Darlene, promise me." I promised. But David died 3 days later, and I forgot that promise immediately. I threw myself straight into the role of a widowed mother, cooking for Andre, taking care of Andre, living to make sure Andre never lacked anything. I turned myself into the background so my son could stand tall and never have to look back. Now, standing in the room my son had just taken from me with a single scream, I looked down at the watch and whispered, so softly I could barely hear myself, "I'm sorry, David, I wasted too much time, but now I'll keep my promise." I pulled 2 large suitcases out of the closet, set them on the floor, and started packing. I packed clothes first. Then shoes, then important documents, then jewelry, then the photos I truly cared about, not the ones I kept only because that's what you're supposed to do. I did everything in silence, steadily, like I was carrying out a ritual. No one came up to ask what I was doing. No one knocked. At 10 p.m., Andre yelled up from downstairs, "Mom, are you going to cook dinner or what?" "No," I yelled back. "Order something." There was a brief silence downstairs. Then I heard muttering. Maybe Andre was complaining to Tessa. But they didn't come up. They didn't insist. They were used to me always giving in, always fixing things, always being ready. And that night, for the first time, I didn't do the things they simply assumed I would do. I kept packing. Something strange happens when you decide to stop. It's not that everything suddenly crashes down in a dramatic movie scene. It's silence. Silence so deep you can hear the zipper sliding on the suitcase, hear objects bumping together, hear the wind outside the window. And in that silence, you start to realize all this time, what exhausted you wasn't the housework. It was the feeling of being taken for granted. Taken for granted that you'll cook, you'll clean, you'll give money. You'll apologize. You'll endure. You'll be the adult in every situation. That night, as I placed each item into the suitcases, I understood something clearly. A boundary isn't a sentence. A boundary is an action. And when you start taking action, people get startled. The next morning, I woke up very early and called Paula. "I need you to help me with something big," I said. "Anything," Paula answered immediately, without asking for more. "I need you to come with me to the real estate office," I continued. "I'm going to list this house for sale." There was a short pause on the other end. Then Paula said, her voice decisive like a stamp, "I'll be there in 30 minutes. I ate breakfast alone in the kitchen. Andre and Tessa were still sleeping in my room. I rinsed my mug, dried it, put it back into the cabinet. Slowly, neatly, as if I were proving to myself that I could still take care of a house. I just wouldn't take care of them the way they demanded anymore. Then I opened my phone and found the number for Rochelle Vaughn, a lawyer I knew from my walking group. I messaged her on WhatsApp. "Rochelle, I need urgent legal advice about selling property and my will. Do you have time this week?" She replied quickly, "I have time today at 4 p.m. Does that work, Darlene?" "Perfect," I texted back. At 9, Paula arrived right on time. She rang the bell. I stepped outside immediately before Andre could come downstairs. We hugged at the door. Paula looked straight into my eyes, an expression that was both worried and proud, the kind only a longtime friend can have. "Are you sure?" she asked. "Surer than anything I've ever done in my life," I said. We went to the brokerage office together. Everything happened faster than I expected. I listed the house at a reasonable market price, $320,000. The agent was a middle-aged man named Mr. Patterson. He explained that at that price and in that location, the house could sell in less than a month. "Perfect," I said. Mr. Patterson looked at me through gold-rimmed glasses. He hesitated for a beat, then asked, "Mrs. Knox, I have to ask, does your family know about this decision?" I met his eyes without flinching. "The house is in my name, Mr. Patterson. I'm a widow. My son is an adult. I don't need anyone's permission." He nodded slowly. "I understand. It's just, I've done this for 30 years, and I've learned that sometimes things are more complicated than a real estate transaction." "You're right," I admitted. "This isn't just selling a house. This is taking my life back." Mr. Patterson smiled, a kind, understanding smile. "Then congratulations, Mrs. Knox. I wish you the best." After that, Paula took me to a cafe. We sat at a table by the window. Paula ordered 2 cappuccinos. "So what now?" she asked. "Now I wait for everything to be finalized," I said. "This house and the one in Sheboygan are almost mine already. When everything is done, I'm leaving." I paused for a moment, as if to hear myself say it out loud. No dramatic goodbyes, no long explanations. I'll just go. I took a sip of coffee, a mild bitterness spreading across my tongue. "And Andre," I continued, my voice so calm it was almost frightening, "Andre will have to learn how to live without using his mother as the solution to every problem." Paula smiled and lifted her cup. "I'll drink to that." We clinked our cappuccinos like champagne glasses. But beneath that determination, there was still a sharp ache in me. I was about to leave the house where David and I had built an entire life, where Andre learned to walk, where we ate thousands of dinners. It was just that those memories belonged to the past. And the house now, It didn't hold love anymore. It only held demands, expectations, and invisibility. I remembered the last dinner the three of us had together. David, me, and Andre. Andre was 27 then. David was very weak, but he insisted on sitting at the dining table instead of staying in bed. I fried chicken, his favorite, even though the doctor had told him not to eat fried food. "One more time won't hurt," David said, giving a weak smile. Andre arrived late, as usual. He sat down, eyes glued to his phone. Then, out of habit, he asked his father if he could borrow money because he wanted to go on a trip with a new girlfriend before Tessa even existed in our lives. David looked at me. There was a sadness in his eyes that I didn't understand that day. Now I understood. David had known. He knew Andre wouldn't take care of me the way I had taken care of him. He knew I would keep giving and never receive anything back. That was why he made me promise. That afternoon, I went to Rochelle Vaughn's office at 4. It was small but tidy, filled with law books and neatly labeled folders. Rochelle greeted me with a firm handshake and offered me water. "Tell me what you need, Darlene." I told her everything: the dinner, Andre's scream, buying the house in Sheboygan, listing this house for sale. Rochelle listened without interrupting, only writing notes on a legal pad. When I finished, she set her pen down and looked at me seriously. "Does Andre know any of this?" "No," I said. "And I don't want him to know until everything is done." "I understand," Rochelle said. "Legally, he doesn't need to know anything. The house is in your name. The savings are yours. You're not married. You have no obligation to inform him about your financial decisions." "Good." But Rochelle continued, her voice firm. "I need you to think about one thing. What if Andre reacts badly? What if he tries to sue you or demand something?" "Let him try," I said without hesitation. "I don't owe him anything. I gave him everything for 42 years. "Enough." Rochelle nodded. "Then we'll do this properly. I'll prepare documents clarifying that your assets are yours, and any future transfers will be under your terms. I'll also update your will." "My will?" I repeated, as if I were daring to place that word into my future for the first time. "Yes," Rochelle said. "Because if anything happens to you, I want you to have full control over who receives what. Besides Andre, is there anyone else?" "My granddaughter, Brianna," I said. "She's always been different. She treats me with real affection, not obligation." "Perfect," Rochelle replied. "I'll include her." I left that office with a feeling I hadn't felt in years. Control. Control of my life, my money, my future. On the drive back home, I pulled over to the side of the road for a moment. I needed a few minutes to breathe, to think. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly. 69 years. I had lived 69 years, and only now, only at this moment, was I making a decision solely for myself. Not because David wanted me in Milwaukee. Not because Andre needed me close. Not because society expected a mother to sacrifice, but because I wanted it. I looked out the window, the familiar streets of Milwaukee, the rows of houses I'd passed thousands of times. Everything was about to become the past, and for the first time, that thought didn't scare me. It made me feel alive. I just didn't expect one thing. That invisible boundary, once raised, would make people panic and show their true faces faster than I imagined. And Andre, who still thought I was just pouting and would cool down, was about to realize this time his mother wasn't coming back. That very night, something small happened in the kitchen, something that seemed insignificant, but it was the first sign that the real battle had begun. The next few days in that house were so strange I didn't even know what to call it. I was still living there, still cooking, wiping things down, doing the chores I had done for years, but nothing happened on autopilot anymore. Everything I did came with a clear awareness attached to it. Every day that passed was one day less in this place. Andre and Tessa settled into my room frighteningly fast, as if that room had always belonged to them. Tessa reorganized the closet, moved things around, hung her clothes right where mine used to be. Andre said nothing. He didn't ask how I felt sleeping in the guest room. He didn't ask if I was angry. He simply assumed I had accepted my place. One afternoon, while I was in the kitchen preparing lunch, Tessa came downstairs holding a handwritten sheet of paper. "Darlene," she called without greeting me, "I need you to go to the grocery store and buy these things. Andre and I are having a few friends over on Saturday." She handed me the list. I scanned each item: expensive wine, imported cheese, premium meat, a dessert from a specific bakery. Altogether, it could easily add up to more than $200. "And who's paying for all this?" I asked, still not looking up from the paper. Tessa stared at me like I had just asked a stupid question. "Well, obviously you. This is your house." "Oh," I said, folding the paper carefully. "I thought this wasn't my house anymore. I thought it was your house now." Tessa frowned, her voice sharpening immediately. "Don't start playing games with me, Darlene. You know what I mean?" "Yes, I know exactly what you mean," I replied calmly, then handed the list back to her. "If you want to throw a party, but you'll pay for it yourself." Tessa's mouth fell open. She stood there like she'd been slapped. "What's wrong with you? Why are you acting like this?" "I'm not acting any kind of way," I said, my voice still even. "I'm just telling you that if you want to host something, you should host it with your own money." Tessa let out a hard huff and stormed out of the kitchen, yelling as she went like she was calling for backup. "Andre, your mom is making things difficult." On Wednesday, the first young couple came to see the house. Andre and Tessa went out to run errands. I was the one who opened the door and greeted them, the potential buyers. They were young, newly married, their eyes lighting up every time they talked about their first home. I walked them through each room, a spacious kitchen. A living room with great natural light, a small backyard but well cared for. They asked questions, I answered. They took pictures. They measured spaces, imagining where the sofa would go, where the dining table would sit, where a future baby's crib might fit. When they stepped into the primary bedroom, my room, which now belonged to Tessa, I saw her clothes filling the closet, her makeup spread across the vanity, her shoes lined up in neat rows. "This is the primary bedroom," I said in a low, steady voice. "Very spacious, lots of natural light." The young wife smiled. "The window is beautiful. You can see the backyard from here." I nodded, but inside me, another voice spoke, very clearly. "This used to be my room, where David and I slept for 25 years, where I cried when he died, where I woke up each morning and prepared for a new day, a day of taking care of my son." And now, I was presenting it to strangers, because my son had taken it from me. At the end of the showing, right at the door, they said, "The house is beautiful, ma'am. We'll think about it and let you know." That night, after the couple left, I sat alone in the kitchen with a cup of tea. I looked around this room, the place where I had cooked thousands of meals, where Andre used to do his homework right at this table, and a memory pulled me back to a night long ago. Andre was 8 years old, burning with a 40-degree fever. David was on a work trip in Chicago. It was just me and a sick child in this house. Andre shivered violently, his face blazing red, sobbing, "Mom, I'm so hot." I held him in my arms, wiped the sweat from his forehead, sang lullabies until he slept. I stayed up all night, changing cold cloths over and over, checking his temperature every hour, praying the fever would break. At 4 a.m, it finally dropped. Andre slept peacefully in my arms, breathing evenly. I sat in the old armchair, my whole body aching, but my heart overflowing with love. This is why I exist, I thought then, to care for this precious little thing. But now, that precious little thing had become a 42-year-old man who screamed in my face and demanded my room. And for the first time, I asked myself seriously, when did love turn into permission to be disrespected? Andre came downstairs right then, hair still wet from a shower. "What are you doing, Hien?" he asked. "Sitting," I said. "Did anyone come by today? I saw a strange car parked outside." My heart beat faster for one moment, but my face didn't change. "Oh, just the air conditioning guy." "Something wrong with the AC?" "Just routine maintenance." Andre opened the refrigerator and took out a carton of orange juice. "All right. By the way, Tessa said you refused to buy stuff for the party on Saturday?" "I didn't refuse," I said. "I just told my daughter-in-law she could buy it herself with her own money." Andre sighed, the kind of tired sigh like I was the one inconveniencing him. "Mom, why do you have to make a big deal out of something so small?" "Small?" I repeated, looking him straight in the eye. "You're calling over $200 for a party you want to host small?" "Yes, it's not a big deal." I set my teacup down so slowly I could hear the base touch the table. "Andre," I said, "do you know how much I manage to save each month?" He shrugged. "No idea. I've never asked." "Exactly," I said. "You never ask. You just assume." "Assume what?" "Assume my money is your money." Andre slammed the orange juice carton down harder than necessary. "No one said that." "You don't have to say it," I replied. "You act like it. Some changes don't arrive with one huge argument. They arrive with very small sentences. One, no. One, pay for it yourself. One, I've never asked. And the scariest part is, when you start saying those sentences, you realize people haven't been loving you because you are you. They're used to you because you're convenient. When you're convenient, everything runs smoothly. When you're convenient, they call it a peaceful family. When you're convenient, they praise you for being a good mother. But you only have to stop being convenient once. And suddenly, they call you strange, difficult, overreacting. That's when you see the cracks, small ones, but enough for light to pour through, and you finally see the true face of everything. My phone rang. Brianna. I looked at Andre for a second, then stood up and stepped out onto the back porch to answer. "Grandma!" Brianna's voice was tight. "Can I talk to you?" "Of course, sweetheart. What's going on?" "Grandma, are you planning to move?" My heart stopped for one beat. "Who told you that?" "No one told me," Brianna said quickly. "But I heard Mom and Dad talking. They said you've been acting weird and might be planning something. They said you've been going out more lately and not saying where you're going." I stayed silent. "Grandma?" Brianna said softly, her voice trembling. "If you're leaving, I understand. I was there that night at dinner. I heard Dad yell at you. I'm so ashamed. I should have said something." "Sweetheart," I said, my throat tightening, "this isn't your fault." "But I didn't protect you," Brianna sobbed. "I just sat there." "You're young," I said gently. "That was between me and your dad." Brianna took a breath like she was trying to steady herself. "Will you tell me where you're going?" "I want to know you're safe. I still want to see you." Tears filled my eyes. "Not from pain, from relief. I'll always tell you," I said. "And you'll always be welcome to come visit me." After I hung up, I stood on the back porch and let the tears fall freely. Not sad tears, grateful tears, because at least in this house, there was still one person who understood. That night, after everyone was asleep, I sat in the dark living room with my phone in my hand. I opened my chat with Paula and typed, "Every day here makes me realize how much time I wasted becoming the person they wanted me to be." Paula replied almost immediately, even though it was late. "But you're not wasting it anymore. Now you're taking it back." I smiled in the dark. The next days passed in a silence stretched tight like a wire. I kept packing, little by little. Every item I put into a box was one step closer to freedom. Andre and Tessa noticed. But they misunderstood. They thought it was just anger that would pass. They thought I would go back to being the obedient mother I'd always been. They didn't know I had signed the listing paperwork. They didn't know I had a new house. They didn't know that in just a few days, everything would change. and their ignorance made me feel powerful in a cold way I had never felt before. Early Friday morning, Mr. Patterson called me. "Mrs. Knox, I have good news," he said. "The young couple who toured the house on Wednesday want to make an offer, $315,000. Are you interested?" I answered immediately. "Yes, I accept." "Excellent," he said, clearly pleased. "I'll prepare the paperwork. We can close the sale in a week." A week. In just 1 week, this house would no longer be mine, and Andre still had no idea. That night, I stood outside the door to the primary bedroom, the room I had lost. The door was slightly open. Tessa was lying on the bed, scrolling on her phone. My bed. The lamp beside it. The lamp David had bought for me. I stared at that scene for a long time. I didn't feel angry, only distant, as if I were looking at someone else's life, inside a house I once called my home. This room doesn't belong to me anymore, I thought. But that's fine, because I was about to have a new room. A new house, a new life. A life no one could walk into and take what was mine with a single sentence. There was only one thing I hadn't accounted for. Once things started slipping out of Andre's control, he wouldn't sit still, and for the first time, he wouldn't scream to demand the bedroom. He would do something else, something that would make me understand. Those small cracks were about to become a full break. On Monday morning, while Andre and Tessa were still sleeping soundly, I left the house very early. In the car were 3 boxes. Not many, but they were things I had chosen carefully. Important documents, a few irreplaceable keepsakes, and small items I didn't want to risk leaving behind for even one more day. I drove straight to the storage unit I had rented the week before. It was a small space, just enough to keep the essentials until I fully moved into the house in Sheboygan. The staff member helped me finish the paperwork, checked my documents, then handed me the key. "Are you moving a lot of things?" she asked in a friendly tone. "Only the important things," I answered. I locked the unit door, held the key in my palm, and suddenly felt lighter, as if I had set down a burden I'd carried far too long. I got home before noon. Andre was sitting in the living room, a laptop on his thighs, working right there on the sofa as if this house were his private office. He looked up when I walked in, but he didn't ask anything. Not a single word. I didn't say anything either. I went straight up to my temporary room and kept organizing, kept packing, kept living like someone preparing to leave, because that was exactly what I was. That afternoon, my phone buzzed. A message from Mr. Patterson. "Mrs. Knox, the buyer wants to move up the closing. They can be ready on Thursday. Is that okay?" I stared at the screen for a few seconds. Thursday. 3 days. In 3 days, this house would officially no longer be mine. I texted back without hesitation. "Perfect, Thursday works." Then I called Paula immediately. "I need you to come with me on Thursday to sign the sale papers." "I'll be there," Paula said instantly, without a second of hesitation. "Do you know when you're going to tell them?" "Thursday night," I said, "after I sign, when it's too late to turn back." Paula was quiet for a moment. "Are you sure you want to do it that way?" "Completely sure," I said, my voice calm to the point of cold. "If I tell him beforehand, he'll try to manipulate me. He'll make me feel guilty. He'll persuade me. He'll promise things. He'll cry. Anything to make me change my mind. I've decided, and I'm not letting him change it." "You're right," Paula exhaled. "You're stronger than you think, Darlene." "I'm learning how to be strong," I said. The next few days passed with a very strange feeling. I still walked through the familiar hallways, still stood in that kitchen, still heard Andre's TV, still watched Tessa rummage through cabinets as if she were living inside my life. But my mind was no longer in Milwaukee. My mind was already in Sheboygan, in the new house, in the new life, where no one would demand that I give up, stay quiet, or give in exchange for the right to exist. There was something I realized during those waiting days. The moment before the storm is always strangely quiet. No one screamed. No one slammed doors. No one tried to stop me, but that quiet was the frightening part, because it felt like a flat, still lake right before a giant wave crashes in. I knew one thing for certain. When the truth came out, Andre wouldn't be able to stay calm, and I knew something else, too. This time, I wasn't going to tremble in front of my son's anger anymore. Just as I expected, on Tuesday, Tessa changed tactics. She walked into the kitchen while I was preparing lunch, her lips stretched into a strained smile, the kind of sweet smile where you can practically hear teeth grinding behind it. "Darlene," she said softly, "I know things have been tense lately, and I want you to know I'm sorry." I looked at her without speaking. "I mean it," Tessa continued, forcing her voice into sincerity. "Andre and I have been under pressure about the apartment. I think we haven't been fair to you." I replied, my hand still working. "I mean, we appreciate everything you do for us," she went on, "and we want to repay you." "Repay me?" I asked, finally looking up. "Yes," Tessa said, quickly pulling out her phone like she was about to present evidence. "Look. I found a spa with an all-day package, massage, skin care, everything. I thought maybe this weekend we could go together. You and me, like friends." I looked straight into her eyes. "Who's paying for this spa, Tessa?" She blinked, confused for 1 second, then snapped back into her role. "Well, I was thinking maybe you could treat me like a gesture." "No," I cut her off immediately. "I'm not treating you to a spa." Tessa's smile vanished like someone flipped a switch. "It was just an idea," she said sharply. "You don't have to be rude." "I'm not being rude," I replied. "I'm being clear. I'm not spending my money to buy you a performance of appreciation." Tessa's mouth opened, furious. "I'm not pretending anything." "You are pretending, Tessa," I said, my voice decisive. "And we both know it." She spun around, muttering something I couldn't quite hear, and honestly, I didn't want to hear it. Thursday came faster than I expected. I woke up early, got dressed carefully, black pants, a white blouse, pearl earrings. I wanted to look put together, proper, worthy of this moment. I went downstairs and made coffee. Andre and Tessa were still asleep. I left a note on the table. "Running errands. Back this afternoon." Paula picked me up at exactly 9. I got into the car, but Paula didn't start the engine yet. She turned and looked at me, her eyes serious. "Ready?" "More than ever," I said. We drove straight to the title company office. The buyers were there, a man in his late 30s with his wife. We greeted each other politely, then sat around the table with the employee. The employee read through the documents in a steady voice, the kind that makes everything sound like a simple procedure, while for me, it was an entire lifetime. He explained terms, conditions, dates. The buyer was paying $315,000. The transaction was completed today. I had until Sunday to clear out of the property. "Any questions?" he asked. "None," I said. Then I signed, page by page, my name in cursive, Darlene Knox, one stroke of a pen, closing an era. My hand trembled slightly on the first page. And memory pulled me back to the last time I signed an important document, my marriage license with David, 47 years ago. We stood at Milwaukee City Hall. I wore a simple white dress. David wore a brown suit. No big wedding. No lavish party, but we had love. And now, sitting in this office, signing the papers to sell the house we had built together, it felt like I was signing divorce papers from a part of my life. But the feeling wasn't sadness. It was release. When I reached the last page, one tear dropped onto the paper. I quickly wiped it away before anyone noticed. But Paula saw. Under the table, she squeezed my hand tightly. That tear wasn't regret. It was goodbye. Goodbye to the woman who lived in that house, the woman who sacrificed everything, endured in silence, existed to serve. That woman was gone now. And from her ashes, someone new was being born. The employee handed me a check, $315,000. I held it in my hand and felt the weight of freedom. Strange how a thin piece of paper could feel as heavy as an entire life. Paula squeezed my hand again, as if to remind me, "You're doing the right thing." We left the office around noon. Out on the street, Paula hugged me tight. "You did it," she said. "You really did it." "Yeah," I replied, and I was surprised when tears rose again. Not sad tears, relief. "Do you want lunch before we go back?" Paula asked. "Yes," I said. "I want to celebrate." We went into a small familiar restaurant overlooking a park. We ordered white wine and pasta. We raised our glasses like we were toasting to a new life. Paula looked at me. "When are you going to tell them?" "Tonight," I said. "When I get home." I got home around 5 p.m. Andre's car was still outside. I stood at the threshold for a few seconds, taking a deep breath before opening the door. I walked in and saw Andre and Tessa sitting in the living room watching TV. They both looked up when they saw me. "Where did you go?" Andre asked. "Taking care of work," I said, setting my purse down on the dining table. "What work?" he asked again in that familiar, irritated tone. I didn't answer right away. I just went upstairs, sat on the bed for a few minutes, like an actor standing behind the curtain, getting ready to step onto the stage. 7 o'clock. I went back downstairs. Andre and Tessa were still in the living room. I stood in the kitchen doorway and said clearly, "Andre, Tessa, I need to talk to you." Andre set the remote down. "About what?" "Come into the living room, please." They both stood and followed me, their expressions a mix of curiosity and annoyance. They sat on the sofa. I sat in the armchair. I took a deep breath, then said, my voice clear and firm, "I sold the house." The air froze. Andre stared at me like he didn't understand what the words meant. Tessa blinked rapidly, like she was waiting for me to laugh. "What did you say?" Andre asked, his voice going hoarse. "I said," I repeated, one word at a time, "I sold the house. I signed the papers this morning. The new owners take possession on Sunday." Andre shot up so fast the sofa let out a sound. "What? You can't do that." "I already did," I said calmly. "This is my house," he shouted. "I grew up here. You can't just sell it without asking me." I looked straight at my son. "The house is in my name, Andre." "I don't have to ask you about anything." Tessa jumped up too, her face going pale. Wait, so where are we supposed to live?" I didn't flinch. "That's your problem, not mine." "Our problem?" Andre repeated, like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Mom, you just made us homeless." My voice stayed even. "You haven't had a home here since last week, since you screamed in my face and told me to give up my room." Andre flinched like he'd been stabbed. "You just didn't think we were serious." "No." I stood up from the chair. "The problem is, you didn't think I was serious." Tessa paced back and forth, her voice frantic, like she was trying to deny reality. "This can't be happening. This has to be a joke." "It's not a joke," I said. "You have until Sunday to move your things out." "No," Andre yelled. "I'm not accepting this. I'll talk to a lawyer." "I'll fight the sale." "You can try," I replied, calm enough to surprise even myself. "But the house is in my name. No debt, no mortgage. The sale is completely legal, and I already consulted a lawyer." "Your lawyer?" Andre froze. "Since when do you have a lawyer?" "Since I decided," I said slowly, "that it was time to protect what belongs to me." Tessa pointed at me, her voice shrill. "You're a selfish, evil old woman." I looked at her without blinking. "Tell me, Tessa," I asked, my voice calm but sharp. "Am I selfish because I sold my house? Or am I selfish because I refuse to let you keep using me?" "Using you!" Andre roared, raking his hands through his hair as if yanking hard enough could rip the truth out of his head. "I have never used you!" "Have you not?" I asked, my voice so steady that even I found it strange. "Then what do you call screaming in my face and forcing me to give up my bedroom? What do you call assuming I should pay for your party? What do you call never asking if I'm okay, only asking what I can do for you?" Andre froze. His lips moved a few times, then stopped. He couldn't answer because he knew it was true. Tessa immediately pulled out her phone on instinct. "I'm calling our lawyer. We're going to sue you." "You can't do this." "Go ahead," I said, not blinking. "Talk to as many lawyers as you want. I'm not afraid." "Enough!" Andre bellowed, slamming his hand down so hard the TV remote jumped. "Enough, Mom. I don't know what's gotten into you, but this is too much." I looked at my son, the child who used to cling to my shirt when he was afraid of thunder, and I said slowly, each word clear, "What's too much for me, Andre, is that I'm tired. I'm tired of being treated like I'm invisible. I'm tired of being treated like a maid. I'm tired of you assuming that anything I have belongs to you." "No one assumes that," Tessa cut in, lying as smoothly as breathing. "Don't they?" I turned to her. "Then why are you sleeping in my bedroom? Why are you using my kitchen like it's yours? Why did you assume I'd pay for your party and that you have the right to borrow my things like it's nothing?" Tessa's mouth opened, but no words came out. I bent down, picked up my purse from the dining table, and headed for the stairs. "Where are you going?" Andre asked, and there was a trace of panic in his voice now. "Upstairs," I said. "You have 3 days. Use them well." I barely slept that night. I lay on the living room bed, the ceiling dim and dark above me, listening to the sounds of a house that had once been my shelter and had now become a battlefield. Andre and Tessa argued until late. Their voices rose and fell, angry, panicked. At one point, I heard Tessa sobbing. At another, I heard Andre on the phone, maybe with a lawyer, then hanging up into a long silence. And even though I only caught fragments, I understood. The sale was legal. Friday morning, I went down to the kitchen early. Andre was already there, as if he'd never left the chair. A cup of coffee sat in front of him, gone cold. The dark circles under his eyes were so deep it hurt to see, even though no one touched him. His hair was a mess, his eyes red and unfocused. He looked up when he saw me. "Mom," he said hoarse, "we need to talk." "We talked last night," I replied, pouring coffee for myself. "No," he shook his head. "A real talk, no yelling." I sat across from him. "Talk." Andre stared into his coffee as if the answer was in there. "I know I was wrong," he said. "I know I said horrible things. I know I treated you badly." "Yes," I said shortly. "You did." He swallowed hard. "I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry." I looked at him, not to catch him in a mistake, but to find sincerity. And I saw something very clearly, desperation. "Andre," I softened just a little, "the problem isn't only what you said that night. That dinner was just the last straw. For years, you've treated me like I exist to solve your problems." "That's not true," he protested, but his voice was weak, like he didn't fully believe it himself. "It is true," I insisted. "When was the last time you asked how I was doing? When was the last time you came to see me just because you wanted to see me? Without needing something? When?" Andre went silent. That silence answered for him. He took a deep breath. "I'll change," he said. "I promise you. I'll be a better son." And in that moment, my heart trembled. I looked into my son's eyes, the child I carried for 9 months, held in my arms thousands of times, loved with everything I had, and I felt my resolve wobble. "Maybe I'm being too harsh," a voice whispered inside me. "Maybe I should give him one more chance. Maybe—" My hand trembled slightly as I lifted my coffee. "You're saying you'll change?" "Yes!" Andre jumped in, his eyes bright with hope. "I'll change. I'll prove it to you." I almost said, "All right." I almost said, "I'll cancel the sale. I'll give you another chance." But at that exact moment, Tessa came down the stairs. She looked at us like someone checking on a negotiation. "Did Andre convince you yet?" she asked, her tone coldly calculating. "Are you going to cancel the sale?" And in that instant, I saw the truth so clearly it hurt. Andre wasn't apologizing because he felt remorse. Andre was apologizing because he needed somewhere to live. This wasn't change. This was survival from someone who had always used his mother as a life raft. I set my cup down carefully. "No," I said. "I'm not canceling anything." "But Mom," Andre sprang to his feet. "You said you're sorry." I cut him off, my voice hardening. "But that wasn't a real apology. You're sorry because you want something from me." "Like always." "That's not true," he protested. "Then tell me," I said. No raised voice, but each word sharp as a blade. "What exactly are you sorry for? Sorry for screaming in my face? Sorry for taking my room? Sorry for treating me like a maid paid in family affection?" Andre went still. He couldn't answer. "You can't answer," I continued, "because you don't even know what you're apologizing for. You only know you need me to cancel the sale." There's something terrifying about seeing the truth, not because it hurts, but because, once you see it, you can't pretend you're blind anymore. For years, I had lived by soothing myself. He's just careless. He's just stressed. He'll understand. I had patched the cracks with every excuse I could find. But that morning, with one sentence from Tessa, that thin layer of ice shattered, and I understood. If I softened this time, I'd be dragged right back into the same old loop. Another 10 years, 20 years, until I grew old in the role of the person who shows up when they need something and disappeared when they were comfortable. My phone rang. Paula. I looked at Andre for a second, then stepped onto the back porch to answer. "Are you okay?" Paula asked immediately. "Mom," my voice caught. "I almost gave up, Paula. My son apologized, and for 1 second I almost believed him." "But you didn't," Paula said, her voice firm like a nail driven in. "You know the difference between a real apology and manipulation." "Don't you?" "Yes," I whispered. "Darlene, listen to me," Paula continued. "If you cancel now, you'll send the message that all Andre has to do is cry and apologize and you'll come back. You'll teach him that. There are no real consequences." She was right. I knew she was right. "You're stronger than this," Paula said. "You've come this far. Don't quit now. Just 2 more days." 2 more days, I repeated, as if stamping the words into place. "Yes." "Then you're free. Do you want me to come stay with you tonight? I can pick you up right now." "No," I said, and I heard strength return to my voice. "I need to stay. I need to do this the right way. Okay. But if you need me, anytime, call." "I know. Thank you, Paula." I hung up. I stood on the back porch for a moment, looking out at the backyard, the yard David used to tend every weekend, every flower bed, every branch. The rose bushes he planted were still there. A little wild now, because no one had cared for them properly in a long time, but still blooming. I took a deep breath. "You were right, David," I thought. "It's time for me to live, really live." That Friday night was the longest night of my life. I lay awake in the dark, listening to the house, the floorboards creaking, water moving through pipes, the occasional car passing outside like pieces of life sliding by. I remembered nights beside David, listening to his steady breathing. I remembered nights alone after he died, clutching a pillow and crying until I couldn't breathe. I remembered nights when Andre was little, crying in the next room, and I'd bolt up and run to him, scoop him into my arms, soothe him as if my embrace could make the whole world safe. All those memories were inside these walls. But memory is the past, and I can't live in the past forever. I have to live for the future. My future. Saturday morning, I woke with a new resolve. 2 more days, just 2 more days. At 10 a.m., Paula arrived with her SUV. We started carrying boxes and suitcases down. The sound of a bin scraping across the wooden floor rang out clearly. The ripping sound of packing tape sealing a box snapped like punctuation. Andre came out of the bedroom when he heard the noise. "What are you doing?" he demanded. his voice both confused and angry. "Aren't you waiting until Sunday?" "There's no reason to wait," I replied. He stood on the stairs, watching me carry each box. He didn't offer to help. He just watched. His expression caught somewhere between hurt and disbelief. Paula and I made 3 trips to the storage unit. On the last trip, as we shut the trunk, Paula turned to me. "Tomorrow is the big day." "Tomorrow I leave," I confirmed. "How do you feel?" I stared into the empty space ahead, as if I could already see the house in Sheboygan, the lake, myself sitting on the porch with a cup of coffee. "Relieved," I said. "Like I finally took off a weight I've been carrying for decades." Sunday arrived in brilliant sunlight. I woke up at 6 a.m, not the kind of waking up because of an alarm or because someone called my name, but the kind where your heart has already decided, light yet certain. I showered, put on comfortable clothes for the drive, and carried the last 2 suitcases downstairs. I set them neatly by the door, like placing a period at the end of a chapter. Andre and Tessa were still asleep. I walked back through the house, making one slow round, as if I wanted to truly see everything one last time, so I wouldn't have to look back later. I passed through the living room, where Andre had taken his first steps, wobbling and then falling into my arms, laughing out loud. I walked through the kitchen, where I had cooked thousands of meals, from pots of soup when Andre had a fever to late dinners when David still tried to sit up and eat with me. I looked out at the backyard, where David used to sit on Sundays with his newspaper, reading and commenting as if he were talking to the whole world. Every corner was full of memories. But none of those memories made me want to stay. I no longer belonged here, not because I didn't love it, but because I had been turned into an extra in my own story. I went upstairs to the master bedroom one last time. The door was slightly open. Tessa was asleep on the bed, my bed, her hair spread across the pillow as if that room had always been hers. I stood there for a moment. Goodbye, I thought. Goodbye to the room where I loved and lost. Goodbye to the place where I cried and prayed. Goodbye to the part of my life I lived for other people. And the strangest thing was, I didn't feel guilty at all. I didn't apologize for leaving either. When I came downstairs, Andre was standing in the living room. He was awake, still in his pajamas, his face exhausted like someone who had been up all night and still couldn't find an answer. "You're leaving, Mom?" he asked. "Yes." He swallowed hard. "Can you give me the new address?" "I'll give it to Brianna," I replied. "If she decides to share it with you, that's her decision." Andre's jaw tightened. "So, that's it?" "That's it. Until you prove you can respect my boundaries." "I do respect you." I shook my head, slowly but firmly. "No, Andre. You use me, and there's a very big difference between respect and use." Andre went quiet. Then he lifted a hand to his hair, the gesture of someone trying to pull back what has slipped out of his grip. "Mom," his voice trembled. "I don't know what to do without you." And for the first time, I saw something in my son I had never seen before. Real fear, not fear of losing a house, but fear of losing his mother. But it was too late, too many years. Too many dismissals, too many times I had made myself smaller just to keep the peace. I stepped a little closer, my voice softening but not backing down. "You'll figure it out," I said. "You're an adult now, Andre. Duh. It's time you learned how to live, without treating your mother like the permanent solution to every problem." "But I'm your son, and I'm a human being," I replied. "A human being who deserves respect, who deserves love, not because of what I can give, but because of who I am." I walked to the door. Before I went outside, I turned back and looked at him one last time. "Take care of yourself, Andre." "You too, Mom," he said, his voice catching. Paula was already waiting outside in her SUV, smiling as brightly as the sun. "Ready for your new life?" she asked. "More than ever," I answered, And I knew I meant it. We got in the car and left Milwaukee behind. The 1-hour drive to Sheboygan passed like a song. We turned on music, listening and laughing, making plans for the small things I used to push aside because I still have to take care of Andre. Paula was staying with me for the weekend to help me settle in. She talked as if it were a girls' trip for two 20-year-olds, except we had lived through enough storms to know how to cherish calm. As we got closer to Sheboygan, Paula suddenly slowed down. "Do you hear that?" she asked. "Hear what?" Paula didn't answer right away. She just tipped her chin toward the window. I rolled it down a little, and I heard wind. Wind off the lake. Wind carrying a scent so distinct, water, crisp cold, the smell of a place that didn't demand I become someone else. And I suddenly realized, for years, all I heard was other people needing me. But now, I was hearing my own life. I turned to Paula, and with one look into her eyes, I understood. The hardest part was over. The most beautiful part was beginning. We arrived at the lake house at around 10 in the morning. Sunlight spilled over Lake Michigan, and the sound of waves was the only thing filling the space. No shouting, no demands, no "Mom has to." Paula turned off the engine. We sat there for a moment, staring at the house as if it were a miracle. "It's yours," Paula said. "It's mine," I repeated, and the sentence sounded both strange and true, like a new pair of shoes you aren't used to yet, but you know will fit. We stepped out. I slid my key into the lock. The door opened. The house smelled clean, like a new beginning. Natural light poured in through the windows, touching the walls, the floors, every small corner. It wasn't big, but it was perfect, because it didn't have to prove anything to anyone. Paula and I spent the whole day unloading. We hung my clothes in the closet, arranged the things I had bought the week before, put each item where it belonged, like restoring order to my life. I hung a few pictures on the walls, pictures I used to hesitate to hang because it's fine to leave them there. By early evening, the house began to feel warm. It had the sound of my footsteps. It had Paula's laughter. It had the feeling of home. Sunset fell over Lake Michigan like a scarf of pink-orange silk. Paula brought out a bottle of white wine. We sat on the porch, watching the sun sink into the horizon. "Congratulations," Paula said, raising her glass. "The bravest woman I know." I let out a soft laugh and clinked my glass against hers. We drank in silence, a kind of silence that wasn't heavy, but full. My phone buzzed. A message from Brianna. "Are you home now, Grandma?" I smiled. I took a picture of the deep purple sunset spreading over the lake and sent it to her. "I'm home now, sweetheart." Brianna replied immediately with a heart emoji. Then another line. "I'm so proud of you. I'll come visit soon." I read that sentence again and again like a healing spell. That night, Paula fell asleep on the living room sofa, and I stayed out on the porch alone looking up at the stars. I opened my notes app. My fingers typed slowly, but each word came from the deepest place inside me. Today marks the first day of the rest of my life. The first day I woke up in a house that is truly mine. The first day I owe no one an explanation. The first day I live completely for myself. 69 years. It took me 69 years to learn this. I am not selfish for loving myself. I'm not a bad mother for setting boundaries. I'm not cruel for protecting my peace. I am a human being. I am a woman who deserves respect, love, and peace. And finally, after 69 years, I understand. I saved the note. Then I looked out at the lake. The water was dark, the moonlight scattered across it like someone had thrown sparkling shards of glass. Wind off the lake blew through my hair, natural silver, undyed, unhidden. The hair of a woman who has lived. Who has loved, who has lost, who has sacrificed, and now, finally, is learning how to live for herself. I smiled in the dark. "David, my love," I thought, I kept my last promise. I'm living, truly living. A wave rolled in and pulled back. Then another wave, an endless rhythm, persistent, free, like my life now. Free,